We're back here on the platform, and we have the representatives of the class of 1966 of the Government High School here, and they are reminiscing about their years in Government High School. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary of their graduation from Government High School. And I asked the question during the commercial break, who's the smartest in the class? Huh?
What did everybody say?
Many smart people.
Many smart
You don't want to say.
No, because you had different subjects.
Okay.
Some people excelled in math or in physics, and chemistry. I was telling Rosie, remember we were the top in geography.
Right.
You know, you had Derek Richardson in
And,
sciences and.
But those
That's
were
what
the
I'm saying,
days
so-
when you got positions in the class. Who came first? Who came second? So tell us about these people who came first, second, and third. You don't have to be ashamed, Darcy.
But I don't remember actually.
Well, Marilyn remembers.
I don't-
Because
we had
Marilyn
different
was
class.
third.
Marilyn, you came third.
No,
Marlon came first too.
No, I used to. Well,
Marlon came first, man.
yes, I came first. There were three. There was Derek Richardson, Jane Hutchinson, the late Jane Hutchinson, and myself. We vied for the three top places.
Is that right?
That's a little controversial because Derek Richardson was in my class in Five Science.
We were
So,
so
Okay.
mixed
so,
as
so
far as
you see the
So,
see
so tell us
difficulty.
how you divided the class now, because obviously some people who was better at science were in a different stream
Yes,
or
yes.
something.
We
Only later. Only
for the
later.
first
we had
That's when we got to the fourth.
4
when you got to-
years,
when we got to-
we were together.
Yeah.
And then the people were selected on what they wanted to do or on their ability to go into science, arts, or general. And then we had another class of special people who were selected from the public schools, who were the top in the public schools, to come into grade 4.
Public,
For-
St. John's, for example.
Oh,
people
yeah,
from
some,
St. John's.
right.
People came from St.
From
John's.
St.
to
John's
Government
as
High.
well. That's right, some of them. So they went into 4 and 5. So, I mean, you had a choice as to what you wanted to do. I wanted to do languages. Derek wanted to do sciences. You wanted to do.
I wasn't sure.
Wasn't
I
sure.
got into my
Right.
through the late Kevin Bethel. I was in the Prince Dr. C.V. Bethel's office because I did well in both science and arts. And I was leaning towards architecture because my father did architecture. And Dr. Bethel came in on our interview, and she said, Marilyn, she's a natural at languages. She must do arts. And I docilely went into arts. And then I didn't want to teach. So I said, what do I do with a language degree? And I had a professor at McMaster in University in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And he said, you ever thought about international relations? And I said, no. And then he said, why don't you pursue that? So I did a postgraduate summer course at Carleton, and then I ended up doing diplomacy.
That's how you got in foreign affairs.
Yes.
Okay.
For my purposes, I wanted to be among the smartest, and to my perception, the sciences were the smartest at that time. In my perception. So what I did to get my science grades were good. So what I did to clinch it, I told the interviewers that I wanted to do meteorology because I knew there weren't too many people interested in meteorology.
Yes.
And I had the university that I was going to, so that's all to say, oh, this person knows what he wants, science.
I see.
So that's
And
how
that's how
I
you
got
got
it.
in science.
That's how I got in
And
science.
then you
But-
ended up as an attorney.
And then I ended up as a attorney. Just going to show you. So, but,
You were very genius, man.
but
Oh,
You're my cousin.
was?
well, you know, it's all good. And
Yeah.
the thing is that we competed. And getting back to the elitism, it was not class. It was academics, and I think that's where this is where the powers that be went wrong, because to say that we were elitists and to abolish that, I think that was the wrong move. And for myself, I hope that our legacy could be to begin the call for the reestablishment of this concept of GHS.
Yeah.
The concept of GHS meaning that you have an elite group of
The best
students.
minds, the best
Top
minds
students,
from
yes.
wherever.
Who want to do
From
better,
wherever.
who want to
The
go
guy,
on.
the person in Nassau Village, in Montel Heights, they could, by hitting the books, they could become what I would say elitists through academic excellence, nothing to do with class. And that academic excellence could propel upward mobility in our society, upward mobility and economic empowerment. But it's nothing to do with class.
Well, the government,
It's not elitism,
the-
it's academic
yeah.
excellence.
The 67 government saw that the same quality education that you were receiving at Government High School, that they would extend this throughout the country. And they established a number of high schools, even in some of the family islands, so that they would bring about equality of opportunity. Now, you have a difficulty with that because
no,
there
the
are
buildings-
there are
There are
some
no
students
difficulty.
who are in C.R. Walker
difficulty.
and C.V.
Absolutely,
Bethel right now and
absolutely.
R.M. Bailey and the rest of them who are doing extremely well.
Absolutely.
But
Can I
those are the
respond
ones,
to that?
excuse me, I think who they need to take out of those schools and put them into a school modeled like the Government High. So they're in a culture of wanting to learn, a culture of wanting to do better, you know? I've been hearing about some other schools in the Family Islands, one in
NGM Major and
NGM Major
Long
and
Island.
Albury and the one in Lucaia.
And there's a Crooked Island High
Honest-
School that I understand they do
They're always
extremely well.
doing well.
There's nothing wrong with
Put them
providing
together.
facilities for students to excel.
So you want the brightest of students in the country
So-
in one place.
So that there's no apology for pursuing excellence.
Are you then telling us that that is what happened when you went to GHS, that you had the brightest students in the country in one place? Because some
Well,
fellows who went to SAC,
Saint-
you know,
and St.
fellows who
John's.
went to SAC and St.
We're
John's,
not saying- we're not saying.
they will dispute that.
You will always have your St. Andrews and what
Especially
have
SAC,
you.
they'll
But,
tell
but,
you.
but the government, it should be a national focus on excellence so that there's no, you heard the gentleman on the radio the other day, in the class of 85, they brought in people thinking that good apples could change bad apples. But what happened was a disaster because the teachers had to spend more time in controlling the class rather than imparting knowledge.
But as I told you, I had the class of 1964 of SAC here on this same program. Some young, well, not so young men now, who really believed, they verily believed that SAC was producing the best students of that era.
That was right up there.
That's
That's
certainly,
Right up there.
certainly,
But can I
certainly.
address
That's
this
another
issue?
model
That's another
that we
model.
could look at.
But can I, no, because I think the two coalesce. You talked about selective education, and Ruthie used it first. The difference with Government High was that quality education was not just words. There was an infrastructure and a planning, a philosophy, and an approach that produced demonstrated excellence. And that's the difference. In other words, you mentioned how Government High started. The government took a policy decision to qualify teachers so that the system, the educational system could be improved. So there was the kind of staff. You also Lana
Yeah.
mentioned how it was a new school with laboratories.
That's
We were the only
right.
school that had laboratories. So
That's-
you
that's
had an
facilities.
infrastructure to support it. And
It
that's,
did.
that's the key. The other thing I want to say in terms of legacy, and again, let me say this first. I mentioned in passing that I was in the Foreign Service. When I served in London, I'll never forget this. I was talking with a French colleague, and he said to me, the government of France every year goes throughout the length and breadth of France to find the best students. They could be in deplorable condition, and then they take them and bring them to the capital, and that's how they get their solid, sound, they maximize the best of their human resources. Other countries do it, but in a more skewed way. For example, Eastern Europe, Russia, the Russian Federation, and China. They take the best and they groom them. Excellence is not an accident.
That's right.
Mhm.
China
so-
does it.
And so,
That's right,
but
that's
the
right.
point that Dorsey raised about legacy, that is a key point, because in trying to do some research for this, I came across a letter that our founding Prime Minister, Celinda Oscar Pinling, wrote in congratulating Government High on 50 years, 1925 to 1975. And one of the things he said, and I'm sort of paraphrasing a bit, he said that the educational trail blazed by the Government High School is likely never to be repeated. And that thing struck me, I mean, like a shock, because it has to be repeated. It should
It,
be
it,
repeated.
it, it needs to
So,
be.
so
It
there
should be.
has to be a legacy. And why? You
Right.
yourself mentioned quality education. The philosophy for serfdom was what? That a literate man is a dangerous man. If you don't have education, you can control without
Most
education,
definitely.
because
That's
you
right.
can't
Most
think.
definitely, most definitely.
So this is why you have, it's something that you have to groom and you have to support. So there should be a legacy where government, the spirit of Government High does not die out. And that is why
Right.
we say the Government High School.
And if I could just read a little piece written here by Anatole Rogers. She was talking about the beginning of the school, which was in 1925, and it ended in 75. And she says, during the 50 years of the school's existence, Government High School has made a tremendous contribution to Bahamas. Former pupils are to be found in private firms, banks, and all government departments, and all forms of service involving most instances considerable responsibility. It's sad that this year of the Golden Jubilee, which would have been up to 75 of the school, marks her end as a selective secondary grammar school. The future of the school, however, will depend on the extent to which both teachers and pupils will do their best to preserve and enlarge what has been educationally valuable in the school.
Having read that, do you think that you people who had the opportunity to attend the government high school have been able to give yourselves to the country and the community, and you have assisted in modeling as role models students of the other generations or the younger generation? Do you think that the students of Government High School, the Government High School, have done what you should have done?
You need to ask that to those we work with.
Good question.
Well,
I think, at least I tried to
I have
personally.
certainly. I have raised a family. I have, and they, my children have gone on to the university and become professionals. We participated in the community, in my church. So we've done all the things. We
You see,
stayed out of trouble.
I feel
So,
that
so we've, if you follow our
much is
example,
given.
To whom much is given, much is required.
expected, yes.
All right? And
so-
you have been given much
yes,
from the Government High School.
Right.
And you've had the best teachers of your time.
I could give you two things to answer your question.
Yes.
As I said, I worked in the Foreign Service, and I gave myself two mottos that I shared with all the officers who ever came through my division. One was, there is no monopoly on gray matter. So I challenged them. And then, in order to help them to embrace that, I said to them, I know it is like out there. You're going to be competing with the best from the rest of the world. When you leave this ministry, I want you to have the confidence that even though you may have gone to all the prestigious schools of, say, your British counterpart, your French counterpart, your American counterpart, you have the confidence of knowing that you are good and you could stand your own.
That's right.
Stand your own
Stand
with
your-
them.
And in my, I've I decided after high school that it was more beneficial and necessary for me to stay here and assist with my family situation, my parents, my younger brothers and sisters. So I went to college for like a year, but I didn't feel comfortable because I needed to be here. So I came back home. And I worked at IBM, which was tremendous for me because I loved the new concept of computers. We had computers at IBM that would take up this whole building, one computer. So I learned how to do key punch, verifying, and taught this to Standard Plumbing, Batelco, and all that, Butler's Bank. I went out and taught this, how to do this, feeding, key punch and verifying cards to be fed into this big monster computer, you know. So even when I went to school, I did data processing and business. But I came back home because I needed to. I made up my mind then with all the training that I had throughout the government high of how to want to be the best, how to focus and structure yourself to be as good as you could be in the hospitality industry. And in that time, the PLP had just won. So they were really encouraging people to go into the hotels. When I went to work at Lowe's Hotel, there were about 8 secretaries there in the executive office. No Bahamian.
Interesting.
England, New Jersey, California. I said,
Interesting.
where are the Bahamians? Well, it took about a year, and then you saw the Bahamians coming in. I learned everything I could about sales and front office in my own time. After work, I would stay behind and go learn front office, and which is the hub of the hotel.
Yeah.
So, and you move on like that. You still can instill excellence into, which I did, into those people at that level.
Yes.
Those people who would never think they could go to the government high school.
Zonica, you said earlier on that excellence is not an accident.
No.
It is an attitude, though.
Yes.
It is an attitude.
It is.
And you developed this attitude, I suppose, in the government high school.
Yes, and I can give you a practical example of the late Kevin Bethel. She taught me English, and I remember I had to turn in a composition assignment, and as we said, we were competitive in a friendly way, and I wanted to get A's all the time. And I got an A minus, and I was like deflated, and I went to her and I said, Miss Bethel, I don't see, no, Miss Eldon, I think she was Bethel.
Bethel,
She was Bethel. I said, I don't, said, why did you give me an A minus? And she said, Marilyn, you did not punctuate a word properly. In other words, you're supposed to break the word on the syllable, not just anywhere. And then the late Colin
Kelly.
Kelly,
He was a French teacher.
French teacher,
Right.
the husband of Nikki Kelly.
Nikki Kelly's husband.
He was brilliant. And he had us, for example, we did Spanish with
Yes,
him.
I
He
remember.
said, get a tape recorder and go to bed listening to Spanish words. So it's these little things
Little
that show
things.
you, it's not just a question, oh, this is school and it's out.
Right.
It's these little, because this is what distinguishes someone of excellence from something else. This is why you pay the enormous amounts of money for a couture robe, dress, rather than something off the rack, because of the details.
Quality.
My friend Norris Stubbs, who was Dr. Norris Stubbs, who was passed, he went to Columbia University and became a professor at Texas A&M. He had one motto. He says, excellence is 99% perspiration and only 1% inspiration. In other words, you have to work.
Even
That-
Jesus had to be taught. The Bible says he went back and he was subject to his parents. He had to be. It's not an automatic thing. Yes, you may be gifted with certain talents, but if you don't hone those talents, they're wasted.
Yeah.
But
Yes?
I'd like to add, I'm not sure if it was you, Marlon, who talked about excellence as an attitude, or did you
I
say
said
excellence?
that.
I'd like to add, but it's also a process.
Yes.
You see? And what I liked about Government High was that whatever stream you were in, there was a process that you had to go through. And fortunately for us, in addition to sitting there and just listening, particularly those in sciences, we had labs to go to. So the schools where you only learn from a book, they could engage in the process
That's
of
right.
touching things and creating
Dissecting.
Yeah.
yes, all the type of stuff, or creating an experiment and
Right,
see something
right.
change. you see?
Foaming.
Yes. Yeah. When we return, I want to talk about the role you people played in 1966 when the government was in the then UBP government was in its last days, and we had winds of change moving through this country. We take this break, we'll come right back.